are in Review 2, Introduction, A Course in Miracles, Workbook for Students. We are ready now for another review. We will begin where our last review left off, and we will cover 2 ideas each day. The earlier part of the day will be devoted to one of these ideas, and the latter part of the day to the other. We will have one longer exercise period and frequent shorter ones in which we will practice each of them. 128. Having one longer practice period for each idea amounts to 2 longer practice periods per day, one in the earlier part of the day and one in the latter part. This is made especially clear in the next sentence, which instructs us to begin each longer practice period by thinking about the idea, singular. In other words, we devote the first practice period to the first idea and the second practice period to the second idea. The longer practice periods will follow this general form. Take about 15 minutes for each of them and begin by thinking about the idea and the comments which are included in the assignments. Devote about 2 or 3 minutes to reading them over slowly several times if you wish, and then close your eyes and listen. Repeat the first phase if you find your mind wandering, but try to spend the major part of the practice period listening quietly but attentively. There is a message waiting for you. Be confident that you will receive it. Remember that it belongs to you and that you want it. Do not allow your intent to waver in the face of distracting thoughts. Realize that whatever form they take, they have no meaning and no power. Replace them with your own determination to succeed. Do not forget that your will has power over all fantasies and dreams. Trust it to see you through and carry you beyond them all. Regard these practice periods as dedications to the way, the truth, and the life. I love that. 129, John 14:16. Jesus said to him, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father but by me. In the Course's allusion to this, the way, the truth, and the life represents salvation in general. Sentence 3 says you are dedicated to salvation, rather than Jesus in particular. Refuse to be sidetracked into detours, illusions, and thoughts of death. 130. The trio in this sentence is designed to be the opposite of the trio in the previous sentence. Detours are the opposite of the way, illusions are the opposite of truth, and death is the opposite of life. You are dedicated to salvation. Be determined each day not to leave your function unfulfilled. Reaffirm your determination in the shorter... I don't know why it's dark, because I have the flash on. Reaffirm that your determination in the shorter practice periods as well, using the original form of the idea for general application and a more specific form when needed. Specific forms will be included in the comments. These, however, are merely suggestions. It is not the particular words you use that matter. All right, in 131. The specific forms to be used when needed, when upsets occur, are the 3 italicized statements underneath the paragraph of commentary for each idea. That is why most of those statements include this, the situation or event we are upset about, or name, the person we are upset about. This practice of responding to upsets with the idea for the day or a related thought is called a response to temptation elsewhere in the workbook and text. And that is review number 2, introduction. Thank you for joining with me, and let's get on with the review. I love you. Have a beautiful day. Oops, I forgot to include Alan Watson's and Robert Perry's comment on the review too, Introduction and Lessons 81 and 90. I'm just going to read a brief word on the review instructions. Introduction. There are 2 longer practice periods, see 1 or 2 below, of about 15 minutes in which we read over the 2 ideas and the associated comments and then spend the bulk of the time with our eyes closed, listening quietly but attentively for a message. Most longtime students of the course agree that this does not mean we should expect to hear a voice as Helen Schuckman did, although some may. Messages can come in many forms: a feeling, an idea, an awareness without words. We are not used to sitting quietly just listening, and this is a practice in doing so. During the first half of the day, we are to work with the first idea, and in the second half, the second idea. The shorter periods are not assigned any number. We are to continue the frequent applications of the previous lessons. If you take all the lessons in which a number is mentioned in regard to these shorter practice periods, the numbers average out to 5 per hour. I think that we can assume that is about what is intended during these days of review. Notice the seriousness attached to both the longer and shorter practices. I, for one, try to avoid the temptation to treat the review period as a time to slack off. This is what the author says. Regard these practice periods as dedications to the way, the truth, and the life. Refuse to be sidetracked into detours, illusions, and thoughts of death. You are dedicated to salvation. Be determined each day not to leave your function unfulfilled. This is a course in mind training. Our minds will not be trained if we do not practice. We will not learn listening if we do not practice. This is what the workbook is all about. Additional notes, 1 or 2, ? By Robert Perry. Many students wonder if we are meant to do 1 longer practice period or 2. Actually, this is no easy issue to resolve. We batted it around for years here at the Circle. The first edition of this book had a section in which Alan presented our different options without resolution. There were a couple of years in which, during our workbook class, I called for a vote from students on whether they thought it was 1 or 2. All of this was for good reason. For the way the section reads, there is no resolution. There are sentences that imply 1 practice period and sentences that imply 2. All of this got cleared up, however, when the Urtext, the original transcript of the course, was disseminated on the internet. This allowed us to see how the introduction originally read. I'll put the relevant part of the Urtext version and the published version in a table side by side. I've started each sentence on a separate line for the sake of comparison. Urtext. The earlier part of the day will be devoted to one of these ideas, and the latter part of the day to the other. Published course. The earlier part of each day will be devoted to one of these ideas, and the latter part of the day to the other. And then here's your text. We will have 1 longer exercise period and frequent shorter ones in which we practice each of them. And then the published. We will have 1 longer exercise period and frequent shorter ones in which we practice each of them. Your text. The longer practice periods will follow this general form. Take about 15 minutes for each of them and begin by thinking about the idea and comments which are included in the assignment. And then the published. The longer practice periods will follow this general form. Take about 15 minutes for each of them and begin by thinking about the ideas for today and the comments that are included in the assignments. A number of very minor changes have been made, but 2 of those minor changes made a big difference. They changed the practice periods from 2 to 1. In the second sentence, there was originally no comma. Without the comma, the longer practice period and frequent shorter ones are grouped together, with the whole group being devoted to 1 idea. Thus, originally it meant in each half of the day we will have 1 longer exercise period and frequent shorter ones in which we will practice each of them, each of the ideas. In the third sentence, which now reads as ideas, which was originally idea, take about 15 minutes for each of them and begin by thinking about the idea, my italics. In the original dictation, then, we practice one idea per longer practice period, and since there are 2 ideas per day, there are 2 longer practice periods per day. These 2 sentences in the published version are the only sentences that imply there is only one longer practice period. Now we see, however, that this implication was entirely the product of minor editing changes. So in case you were curious, there you go. At last, we can state confidently we are meant to do 2 longer practice periods, each one being devoted to one of the review ideas. Okay. Review 2 practice instructions. Again, this is from Alan Watson and Robert Perry. Longer. 2 times, 1 for each of the ideas for about 15 minutes, 3 or 4 minutes. Slowly read over the idea in comments and think about them. Close your eyes and spend the remainder of the practice period listening for the message the Holy Spirit has for you. We can see this time of listening as having the following components. Listen quietly but attentively. Listen in stillness and with all your attention. Hold an attribute of confidence. This message belongs to me. Desire, I want this message. And determination, I am determined to succeed. Listening for 10 minutes can easily be one big invitation to mind wandering, and so the majority of the instruction for the exercise deals with this issue. For out of control mind wandering, go back and repeat the first phase. For more minor mind wandering, realize the distracting thoughts have no power and that your will has all the power, and then replace the thoughts with your will to succeed. Do so with firmness. Do not allow your intent to waver. Refuse to be sidetracked. This is not mentioned in the instructions, but you may find it helpful to actually ask for the message at the beginning and periodically throughout. You may say, for instance, "What is your message for me today?" You may even want to use this request as the specific vehicle for dispelling wandering thoughts. Reminders are frequent. Repeat the idea as a way of reaffirming your determination to succeed. The first half of the day is the first lesson. The second half of the day is the second lesson. Response to temptation. Whenever you are tempted to be upset, repeat some variation of the idea modified to apply to this particular upset. You may use one of the 3 specific forms suggested after each lesson. Notice how they are directed at a specific upset. Virtually everyone is aimed at an upsetting this, or an upsetting name. Or you may generate one of your own specific forms by using a variation on the practice of letting related thoughts come. Simply lean back and let your mind come up with a sentence that applies the essence of the idea to your current upset. For example, see the specific form suggested after each lesson. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I love you. Review 2 practice instructions. Have a beautiful day.